also want to say that I was very happy to, over the last week, and especially today, meet Tim's family members, which kind of completed the entire circle and really got a better understanding of what Tim's life was about and truly who Tim was. A machine has value only as it produces more than it consumes, so check your value to the community. Timmy in this community was simply amazing. He was everywhere, every night, 7 days a week. And I sometimes had to look twice because I'd see him in Holyoke, Springfield, Amherst, and then I'd see him again here in the venues. The following morning, we'd see him out. I can't remember the first time I met Tim. I know it was a number of years ago, probably close to 20. But as I took the Iron Horse over in '95, I seem to think that I saw Timmy first thing in the morning and definitely every evening, probably for much of the last 14 or 15 years. When I lived in town, I saw Timmy almost every morning. Pretty much the first person I saw, Timmy and or Al. And I'll talk about that relationship in a minute. And definitely in the evenings, I saw Timmy most nights, sometimes as I left the venues. Long after the music had finished, Timmy was typically there with us in a very special way, just about every evening, helping in some way or another, whether it was sweeping or trash, moving chairs, helping Al getting set up for the next show, the evening prior to the show. There's just really too much to talk about. And I still find myself, as many of us that work with him on a daily basis find ourselves looking around the corners because he moved so quickly, doing his job in a way that no one else could do that job. At the Calvin, Timmy would start doing some of the trash detail long before the show ended. And it was sometimes just a hand gesture or a motion of the eye where he'd walk in after being all around town. He knew the exact moment to come in. He'd look at me and I would just go like this, and he'd know that he could start in a certain area even though the show was going. He'd start in the cafe areas, in the entry areas. As soon as the show finished, he knew exactly where to begin. If the balcony wasn't full, he'd start at the upper balcony. If the balcony was full, he'd start at the bathrooms. He found a way to get started, and he was finished. And long before anyone would even start, Timmy had begun his task, and we'll have no one that can replace that, because we've tried over the last month, and I can tell you, there's way too many stories, and I think some appropriate, some not so appropriate. There's a few funny stories. You know, Northampton, when they abolished smoking in all the venues, there was a period of time where some establishments were fighting the establishment and were allowing people to smoke, and there was a fine system, and there were certain people that were responsible on the city side for making certain that there was written fines that were given to certain establishments. No one could quite figure out who was coming in the venues and getting a list to the city or who that smoking cessation person was. And I think I may have been the only person other than that office and that department that knew, and other than a few people that I told the story to over the last month. I found out through a mole in the city that it was actually Timmy, because he went to like 40 establishments. Usually on Mondays, the list would be submitted to the city, and then the fine system would start. No one really knew that. If they did, he probably wouldn't have been as welcome. When I found that out, I actually confronted Tim because I was concerned of my own venues. As we did, the Iron Horse was always non-smoking, Pearl Street wasn't, and there'd be a few people that would always tend to smoke, usually the performers. And I was concerned that we would be turned in, so I pulled him aside and I let him know that I knew. And that's when it stopped. No lists that went into the city. He was embarrassed because he did turn red. That was the only communication that we ever had on that subject. And there were many other funny situations, as Bob had mentioned at the door here. No one ever really knew. Timmy would just come into all the venues, never paid for a ticket. And when I first met him, and again, I don't really remember when it was that I first met him, but we never even looked to charge him. He'd come to any show he wanted to come to, and he found his special place with us, and then started doing other odd jobs and tasks in the morning on the real estate side with Al, and really was just an important part of our team who is going to be missed beyond